my INFJ friend. Before we go any further, I want you to pause and look honestly at your relationship history. Not with shame, not with self-blame, just with clarity. Do you see it? You don't just attract partners, you attract projects. People with deep wounds, unresolved chaos, brilliant potential wrapped around emotional volatility. People who needed saving. People who felt familiar before they felt safe. And somehow, no matter how intelligent, intuitive, or self-aware you are, you kept ending up drained, confused, doubting yourself, wondering how love turned into survival. This isn't coincidence, and it's damn sure not bad luck. This is a specific psychological setup, one that makes INFJs unusually magnetic to narcissistic personalities. You weren't unlucky, you were visible. This video is not here to shame you or harden your heart. It's here to give you language for something you felt but never fully named. We're breaking down the INFJ-narcissist dynamic with compassion and precision, why your best traits become entry points. How narcissists recognize you before you recognize them. Why love starts as intensity and ends as erosion. And how to shift from unconscious vulnerability to conscious protection. If this resonates even uncomfortably, I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment, I read them and I reply. And if you want more soul deep, no bullshit insight like this, subscribe. Now let's talk about the pattern you've been living inside. 1. Unpacking the painful pattern in an INFJ's relationship history. At some point you noticed it. Different faces, different names. Same ending. You start with hope, you end with exhaustion. The relationship begins fast, not rushed, but intense. A sense of recognition, depth from day one, confessions that arrive early. Trauma revealed like intimacy, you feel chosen. Finally, someone who sees you, but slowly something shifts. You begin carrying the emotional weight, you become the translator, the stabilizer. The one who understands, your needs shrink. Their needs expand. And by the time you realize something is wrong, you're already bonded not just emotionally, but morally. Because leaving doesn't feel like leaving a relationship. It feels like abandoning a wounded soul. This is where INFJs get trapped. You don't bond through chemistry alone. You bond through meaning. You attach to who someone could be. And narcissistic personalities are very good at presenting potential while outsourcing responsibility. You weren't foolish. You were faithful to your values. But values without boundaries become chains. Looking back, where did you mistake emotional intensity for emotional safety? 2. Why narcissists are engineered to detect and exploit your empathy. Narcissists don't stumble into INFJs by accident. They scan, they are exquisitely sensitive to emotional attunement, not because they feel deeply, but because they need regulation from the outside. Your empathy feels like oxygen to them. You listen without judgment. You are too deep for the surface-level world. Your empathy attracts emotional leeches. You are mysterious, that fascinates and frustrates people. Narcissists love your empathy. Your love is deep and devoted. The future vision that makes others feel hopeful. You reflect emotions with clarity. You create psychological safety simply by being present. To a narcissist, that's not kindness, that's supply. They feel seen without being accountable, validated without being challenged, held without having to hold back. And here's the uncomfortable truth. They know you won't abandon easily. Because you see pain beneath behavior, because you contextualize harm, because you understand why people are the way they are. Narcissists don't need you to fix them. They need you to stay. And your empathy unguarded becomes the hook. Who learned they could you are too deep for the surface-level world. Your empathy attracts emotional leeches. You are mysterious, that fascinates and frustrates people. Narcissists love your empathy. Your love is deep and devoted. The future vision that makes others feel hopeful, hurt you and still be understood. 3. From I have a big heart to I have a target on my back. There's a belief many INFJs carry like a badge of honor. My empathy is my strength. And it is. Your capacity to understand, to see beneath behavior, to feel nuance where others feel noise, that's rare, that's powerful. That's part of what makes you who you are. But here's the truth most people never say out loud. Strength without strategy becomes exposure. Narcissistic personalities aren't drawn to empathy alone. They're drawn to empathy paired with self-doubt. They sense when someone questions their own perceptions, explains harm instead of naming it, gives endless benefit of the doubt, delays boundaries in the name of understanding, internalizes blame to preserve connection. And once that pattern is detected, something shifts. You stop being a person in the relationship. You become a resource. Your kindness becomes negotiable. Your boundaries become flexible. Your discomfort becomes inconvenient. Your pain becomes invisible, even to yourself. Not because you're weak, but because you were taught often very early that harmony mattered more than truth, and that being good meant being accommodating. This is where empathy quietly turns inward and mutates into an inner critic. A voice that says, maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe if I explain it better. Maybe it's my fault. That internal voice is often the real mechanism narcissists exploit. Because once you doubt yourself, they don't need to overpower you. You do the work for them. This is exactly why learning to quiet the inner critic is not optional for INFJs. It's protective. And it's why this theme aligns so closely with Get Out of Your Head. My book speaks directly to this internal battlefield. How the nagging, self-undermining voice forms, why it feels so convincing, and how it keeps empathetic, perceptive people stuck in cycles of overgiving and self-erasure. Through practices like meditation, examining self-limiting beliefs, and cultivating healthier inner dialogue, Get Out of Your Head helps INFJs reclaim their authority internally first, where real boundaries begin. If this resonates, my book Get Out of Your Head is available on Amazon in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook formats. The link is in the description below. Get your copy now. It will directly support this work of reclaiming clarity and self-trust. Because here's the shift that changes everything. Empathy without discernment is not virtue. It's vulnerability. You don't need less compassion. You don't need to harden your heart. You don't need to become colder. You need direction. Empathy guided by self-respect becomes wisdom. Empathy paired with boundaries becomes power. Empathy grounded in self-trust stops being a target and starts being a filter. Where have you been understanding at the cost of your own dignity, and what might change if you chose yourself first? Think about that. For you are too deep for the surface-level world. Your depth isn't just emotional, it's structural. You don't skim life, you dive it. While others float across moments, you sink into meaning. And that alone already sets you apart in a world addicted to speed, shortcuts, and appearances. Your empathy is not casual. It's immersive. You don't simply feel for people, you feel with them. You absorb emotional temperature. You notice what isn't said. You sense when someone's laugh is a shield, when their confidence is compensation, when their anger is grief wearing armor. And that level of perception attracts attention. Some people feel seen by you for the first time in their lives. Others feel exposed. Narcissistic personalities fall into both categories. They are drawn to your empathy because it feeds something hollow inside them. Your presence soothes their chaos. Your attention regulates their insecurity. Your understanding gives them permission to stay unfinished. You become an emotional power source. Your mystery only deepens the pull. You don't overshare. You don't reveal everything at once. You hold depth quietly, which makes people project onto you hope, fantasy, rescue, salvation. To a narcissist, that mystery feels intoxicating and frustrating at the same time. They want access to you, but not equality with you. Your love doesn't skim either. When you love, you commit energetically. You stay curious, you stay present. You stay devoted long after others would have disengaged. And that devotion is dangerous in the wrong hands. Because you also carry something else, vision. You don't just see people as they are. You see who they could become. You sense wounds the way surgeons sense fractures instantly, instinctively, accurately. And part of you believes deep down that love, real love, should be transformative. So when someone is broken but brilliant, wounded but self-aware, charismatic but clearly hurting, you lean in, you think, if I stay steady, if I love cleanly, if I model safety. But here's the brutal truth. Narcissists don't heal through love, they consume it. They take your presence, your insight, your patience, your emotional labor, and use it to avoid doing their own work. Your healing instinct becomes their hiding place. And the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. Not because they've changed, but because you're invested in the future you can see. You're not trapped by who they are. You're trapped by who you hope they'd become. This isn't weakness. It's depth without protection, and depth without boundaries becomes a wound. Who are you still loving for their potential instead of their behavior, and what is it costing you to stay? 5. This isn't bad luck. It's a specific psychological vulnerability. Let's say this without softening it, without apologizing for it, and without turning it into self-blame. You didn't attract narcissists because you're weak. You attracted them because you're powerful without protection. INFJs often grow up learning how to read the room before they learn how to read themselves. You became emotionally fluent early. You learned how to soothe tension, anticipate moods, and prevent emotional explosions before they happened. Not because you wanted control, but because peace felt like safety. So you became the emotional adult too soon, the mediator, the listener. The one who understood that conditioning doesn't vanish when you grow up. It evolves. In adulthood, it looks like patience without limits, understanding without accountability, compassion without containment. You don't chase chaos. Chaos finds you because you know how to sit with it. Narcissistic personalities sense this immediately. They don't consciously plot it like villains, but their nervous system recognizes yours as familiar. You feel like home to their unresolved wounds. And here's the hard truth INFJs need to hear. Your empathy without boundaries signals availability. Your insight without discretion signals access. Your loyalty without reciprocity signals endurance. That doesn't make you naive. It makes you predictable to people who are wired to take. So the shift is not about becoming colder. It's about becoming clear. Your empathy is not an open door. Your insight is not public property. Your love is not a rehabilitation program. You are allowed to be discerning without being cruel. You are allowed to leave without explaining yourself into exhaustion. You are allowed to choose peace over potential, safety over hope, reality over fantasy. Awareness breaks the pattern, but boundaries are what end it. Because once you stop negotiating your limits, predators lose interest. What would change if you trusted your intuition before your empathy instead of after the damage is done? My INFJ friend, you weren't stupid. You weren't desperate. You weren't broken. You were generous in a world that preys on generosity. You were open in a world that rewards extraction. You were deep in a world that survives by staying shallow. And that was never a flaw. But now you see the pattern. Not to shame yourself, not to harden your heart, but to finally step out of it. You don't need to love less. You don't need to care less. You don't need to become someone unrecognizable. You just need to love from a place of sovereignty instead of sacrifice, from choice instead of obligation, from clarity instead of hope, from self-trust instead of self-erasure. And when you do that, everything changes. Who you attract, what you tolerate, how deeply you can finally rest inside yourself. If this spoke to you, I'd genuinely love to hear your story. Leave a comment, I read them and I reply. And if you want more grounded, soul-centered insight like this, subscribe. This space is for people who feel deeply and protect themselves fiercely. You were never naive. You were just learning where your generosity belongs. And now, you know.